Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of the world, we are back here again with another video. This time, people were asking me constantly to rank every single decade of Spider-Man comics. Every single one. The 60s, the 70s, the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and I guess 2020s for what we have so far. That one will be a little bit of a tentative one. I was so excited when I got all these comments about making this video. I was like, I just gotta make this video. I have to make this video. So here I am. I'm presenting this video for all of you guys right here to see. And before I jump into it, you guys gotta comment down below what you think is the best decade for Spider-Man comics. Like, which one really speaks to you? Which one of these decades is the cream of the crop? Let me know down below, and let's jump into the video. In this video, we're going to talk about each decade and what actually happened in each decade as we rank these decades, right? When it comes to Spider-Man comics, each decade has really just solidified itself, and it really separates itself from the last one or the next one or the ones that come to follow, at least in my opinion. Originally, you have the 60s decade, right? And in the 60s, you got people like Stan Lee and Ditko. This is the creation. Romita Sr., Buscema. You know, you got so many great people working on the stories at the time. And during this time, you got Spider-Man's first initial story. You got the iconic intro to Spider-Man. You have Amazing Fantasy 15, and you got Amazing Spider-Man, like up until Amazing Spider-Man 100 almost. Many characters were featured in this, like Chameleon, first appearance, Vulture's first appearance, Doc Ock's first appearance, Sandman's first appearance, Lizard's first appearance, Electro's first appearance, Green Goblin's first appearance, and Rhino's first appearance, Shocker too, Prowler as well, even more than just that. A lot of characters really got their start in the 60s, so I can understand why somebody would have 60s so high up. Then you move to the 70s, and the 70s is more of like solidifying the story. The 60s really put the story on the wall, and the 70s is like, all right, now we're moving, all right? Let's put an engine in this mofo, and let's start kicking it up and driving around. And in the 70s, you got like Gary Conway, Ross Andrew, Marv Wolfman, John Byrne, John Romita Sr., Gil Kane, and you got some great iconic stories. Like, I'm sure everybody knows the night Gwen Stacy died. Like, that's so iconic. You have 24 Hours to Doomsday. This was adapted in a 90s Spider-Man show, so I'm sure a lot of people have seen this as well. And then many iconic characters actually made their appearance in Spider-Man's mythos in this decade. You got Black Cat, Morbius, Jackal, Carrion, and Punisher. Punisher actually first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man, and it was in the 70s when Punisher made his first appearance. In the 80s, you know, to set itself apart, the 80s is a little more different. The 70s was solidifying the story and getting it running. The 60s was starting the story. The 80s was like batshit crazy in the best way possible, honestly. The 80s was really like, all right, well, before we put an engine in this, now we're going to put a V8 and a turbocharger, and we're going to put a Giga Booster engine rocket ship on the back, too, because the 80s really just takes the story and really flies with it. In the 70s, Gwen Stacy died, yeah, but then in the 80s, Peter's moved on since then, and he gets married to MJ. Let me do a full breakdown. In the 80s, you got like JMD Matisse, you got Tom DeFalco, you got Peter David, you got David Michelini, Todd McFarlane started out working in Marvel in the 80s. You got so many great storylines like Death of Jean DeWolf, Kraven's Last Hunt, the original Spider-Man Gang War, the Black Suit arc, California Schemin', Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, Spider-Man vs. Firelord, Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut, Venom's first appearance, you got Silver Sable's first appearance, Hobgoblin's first appearance, and the Rose's first appearance. But last but not least, Spider-Man even gets married. The man gets married, people. I love the 80s. I think I'm obsessed with the 80s Spider-Man. But then we move to the 90s. In the 90s, everybody knows what is the 90s known for more than anything else. It's very, very like cliche, but it's also true. The 90s is known for being edgy, and that is exactly what 90s Spider-Man would be. Todd McFarlane was writing his own Spider-Man story. DeFalco was still around helping create like Maximum Carnage. David Michelini was helping with that. D. Matisse, Terry Kavanagh, Luke Ross, Sal Buscema. And then you got the great storylines like I mentioned, Maximum Carnage, Clone Saga, Return of the Sinister Six, The Child Within, maybe the greatest Spider-Man story ever came out in the 90s. Again, Todd McFarlane had his own Spider-Man storyline, The Kravinoff's Revenge, Carnage's first appearance, and Shriek's first appearance. The 90s was super duper edgy in the best way possible. It was a phenomenal run of the decade. Then you got the 2000s, right? In the 2000s, you got JMS, you got John Romita Jr., you got Dan Slott, Paul Jenkins, Humberto Ramos, and there's just some great stories in here too. You got like Flowers for Rhino, you got the sensational Spider-Man one-shot, Civil War is very iconic, and then obviously One More Day happened in the storyline. You can't mention the 2000s without bringing that up. Many villains made their first appearances, like Morlun or Mr. Negative, Anti-Venom, and even the Thousand made his first appearance in the 2000s, as well as Overdrive. 2000s tones down the edginess a bit, but 2010s, honestly, you could say it turns it back up a little bit with some of these storylines, but it does go in a bit of a different direction because, you know, Spider-Man has a completely new direction he's being written in. He's no longer being written to continuously grow. He's now being written for more, like, newer readers to just jump on and read. In the 2010s, you have, like, Dan Slott again, Ryan Stegman, Nick Spencer, Ryan Otley, Humberto Ramos, Chip Zdarsky, Mark Bagley even was around too for this. He was in the 90s as well, but he's also back in the 2010s a bit too. You got like Superior Spider-Man, Parker Industries, Spider Island, Go Down Swingin', the Red Goblin storyline, Spider-Man Life Story, Rage of the Rhino, and My Dinner with J. Jonah Jameson, as well as The Hunted. And then characters like Kindred first appeared here, Regent first appeared here, and Itsy Bitsy also first appeared here. And then lastly is the 2020s. This is really tentative. I'm probably just going to put it in its own ranking before I even like start the ranking. I'll let you guys know right now. It's just not finished, and it would be unfair for me to put it anywhere. As of now, I don't really like it too much, and I think it has the makings to be the worst decade by far out of all of them. But I don't think it's fair to actually say that until the decade's over. It'd be like really like, it would reflect really poorly on me as a content creator if I was willing to say that this era sucked when we still have 5 more years, 4 more, or the rest of this year, and then 4 more years after that, to determine how good this era currently is. So for this video, I'm going to put this in a tentative tier, and we're going to tier list them all. The 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, and the 2010 Spider-Man comic runs, okay? Obviously, there's multiple runs in each of these. The bottom of our list, okay? What is the worst, the absolute worst decade out of every single Spider-Man comics decade? In my opinion, the absolute worst out of all of these has to be the 2010s. And although it is the absolute worst, I think at the worst I could put it at is C tier, because there's still some good stuff in here. I loved Nick Spencer's run. Seeing MJ be an important character again and being written well was just so great. Having her matter again in Spider-Man's mythos, chef's kiss. I loved it. On top of that, you have like the Rage of the Rhino, which is an all-time great Rhino story, and My Dinner with Jonah is really important because it really makes J. Jonah Jameson more of an actual character. For God knows how long, like 50 years, he was just Spider-Man's biggest hater, and now they actually got some development out of it, and they can learn to work with each other. Sure, they've developed over the years, but this was the final needle moving over to like, damn, J. Jonah Jameson and Spider-Man can now actually be cool with each other because he knows the truth, he knows who he is, and he knows he's not out to get him. So all that stuff in the 2010s was great, especially like the artwork on Ryan Otley's stuff. I mean, honestly, the artwork on any of the stuff in this era, like Superior Spider-Man's artwork was phenomenal. Otley went crazy. I love Humberto Ramos. Bagley, again, is an all-time great. The artist in this era is not bad by any means. I can't, honestly, the art in every single era is probably a 10 out of 10 because these artists who got to work on Spider-Man, God, they are just so damn talented. We are really lucky as Spider-Man fans. But why this is the lowest ranked one and why I'm putting it in C tier for me personally, this is the Spider-Man era where it felt like things stopped mattering. You know, throughout the 60s to the mid-2000s, it really felt like it was all one continuous story and things actually mattered. And sure, there was like reboots here and here, not like full-fledged reboots, but like retcons and Aunt May dying and stuff like that. People knowing Spider-Man's identity and stuff like that. There was a lot of stuff with that, you know, it was hard to like keep track necessarily, but overall it was one consistent storyline. Everybody knew, felt good, it worked, and this was a storyline like that continuously we ran with. The 2010s, in my opinion, like I said, is the first decade that doesn't do that. We no longer have Spider-Man married. He just made a deal with the devil in 2007, and now he's a single man on the prowl, and they're just telling stories that constantly revert back to reset to zero, right? Superior Spider-Man has Doc Ock take over Spider-Man's body, and although I do think Superior Spider-Man has some fun to it, I'm not the biggest Superior Spider-Man hater. I don't think it's the greatest story, but it's fun. It's a fun read. It's not phenomenal. It's not terrible. It's fun. And comics at the end of the day are supposed to be fun, so I can actually vibe with Superior Spider-Man. But the issue is the resets, right? Superior Spider-Man happens, it resets. Now Peter Parker is back in the body, no issues. Parker Industries happens, Peter Parker becomes a billionaire CEO, it resets. Spider-Man's back to being broke and a loser and a dweeb. Like, these resets constantly happening are very frustrating. Spider Island, everybody turns into spiders. Reset. Well, thank God, honestly. But you get what I'm saying. Like, at a certain point, nothing is actually sticking in these stories. And it even sucks more because Nick Spencer's run, sadly, becomes the exact same. This is easily my favorite run of the entire decade, but at the end of the day, Peter Parker and Mary Jane break up, and it resets back to factory reset at 2007, where everything is back to normal and nothing matters. And honestly, the runs after that are the same, but that's 2020s. So overall, it's hard for me to put the 2010s above C tier when none of the stuff feels like it's actually going to matter, or none of the stuff felt like it actually did matter, because everything just kept resetting itself. I felt like that was never a thing before One More Day, and once One More Day happened, it just became the thing. Of course, we'll see with this current run with Joe Kelly and Pepe Larraz. We'll see how they cook it. We'll see if they can be allowed to continue their story after it ends, or if it's just going to reset and we're going to put all the toys back in the toy box. But without a doubt, I have to put 2010s in the last place spot in my C tier. Next up would be B tier, actually. It's the second to last place one, but I do think it still has a lot of good in it. It would be the 2000s. Now, the 2000s, it has One More Day, and that's probably the only thing holding it back from being in the A tier, because One More Day could have easily put this into the F tier. But when you have the run on this era like JMS had, it is so freaking good, man. That JMS run was godlike. 2007 ruined it, and then, you know, we have One More Day. But even interesting characters like Mr. Negative were created after One More Day happened. Like, it's not like the 2010s where things just started resetting constantly. Like, yes, this was the big reset, but it still felt like they were moving with this, at least to me. The stories of this era were really freaking peak. Like, I've already talked about Flowers for Rhino being an all-time favorite Spider-Man story for me. I've talked about it in other videos before. Moreland shows up during this decade as well, and during this decade, Moreland's actually written well. Like, the 2010s, they have all the Spider-Verse shenanigans, and Moreland is just so poorly depicted in that. Versus when you look at this decade, Moreland is the ultimate Terminator badass Spider-Man villain, and I much prefer the character to be done like that. Feels like the character gets so much more justice if you use him like that, like the final boss kind of bad guy, rather than a reoccurring villain who's supposed to be a Spider-Verse villain, but then he's got a bunch of family members who are just like him and have no character. Boring. So the 2000s Moreland is great, and I love that they did it with the 2000s. Everything after that's buns, so even less points for 2010's decade. The Sensational Spider-Man is like one of the all-time greatest Spider-Man one-shots ever. If you've never read it, I strongly suggest you do. Outside of the story being so beautifully written, the artwork is also so good, man. I can't even rave about this book enough. Definitely check this one out for the 2000th decade. And Civil War. I'll go back to One More Day, because I'll end with One More Day. But Civil War, maligned. People love it, people hate it. Me personally, again, it's a lot of comic booky stuff. I think it's cool. It inspired a lot of like hero versus hero stuff, and I think that's also really cool. As a kid, I used to always think about like, what would happen if these two fought? And Civil War was essentially like Marvel professional writers like, well, what would happen if these two fought? So it was like, wow, kid me was like, that's awesome. That was like really like middle-aged, teenage me, because that's how old I was. I don't remember how old I was during Civil War. I was probably like, I was a kid still. I was like 11, 10. See, I was like, wow, this is awesome. This is exactly how I wanted it. Either way, Civil War is a cool storyline. It doesn't show Spider-Man out to be the best, and it actually starts the ending of One More Day, or the ending of everything we love, because it, you know, it leads into One More Day after Aunt May is killed. But I can't hold that against Civil War, because Spider-Man stuff in Civil War is pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. You got Spider-Man like, you know, wrestling with the fact that he has to give up his identity, and then he's like wrestling with Captain America being his icon and his hero. Then Aunt May gets shot and killed during it. Then we get one of the greatest, easily a top 10 Spider-Man story of all time, Spider-Man Back in Black. Woo! Yeah, Civil War for Spider-Man fans had some really good stuff in there, guys. I can't lie. And yes, it leads to One More Day, and we're going to talk about One More Day just briefly. But I'm a fan of Civil War, and I think it adds points to the 2000 Spider-Man comics. I'm not a fan of the entirety of it, because what it did to Iron Man was just, it's an injustice. But I am a fan of the Spider-Man parts and a lot of the Spider-Man parts overall. But lastly, One More Day would actually kill this decade's chance of being considered an A or even S tier Spider-Man run is One More Day. And God, this is the worst thing that ever happened in Spider-Man comics. It's not even like, you don't question it. Nobody questions it, because we all know it's true. This shit sucks. One More Day, if you don't know what it is, it's when Spider-Man makes a deal with the devil to get rid of his marriage so that Aunt May could come back to life, which is not only super duper out of character, it's not only super duper terrible, it still persists to this very fucking day. So if you were to pick up a Spider-Man comic in the great year of 2025, 18 years after One More Day actually first was printed, the ramifications of One More Day are still in effect. Spider-Man himself is still currently in a pact with the fucking devil of Marvel, everybody. Think about that. Unbelievable. If One More Day doesn't put this era enough into the, wow, this is really not that great category, I have to put it in B tier for you guys like it did for me, allow me to introduce you to Sins Past. This is a story in which Norman Osborn banged Gwen Stacy and she had his babies. That came out in 2005. Yes, that's this decade. I'm going to just put this in B tier. I'm not going to think about it anymore because Sins Past might let this slide down a little bit to C tier. So let's just put it in B tier and move on. Now for me, next up, we got to go to A tier. The rest of these are all A tier or above. I love the rest of these decades. We got 4 more left to cover. For me, next up, it's the bottom half of the A tier. It's going to be the 70s. Now, the 70s decade is really freaking good, man. The 70s decade, Gary Conway, Ann Ross Andrew, Marv Wolfman, John Byrne, John Romita Sr., and Gil Kane really were producing some of the best work that really helps solidify Spider-Man stories and makes him the #1 character at Marvel. If you didn't know, when Spider-Man first came out into the scene, he actually was not Marvel's #1 character. The thing was, it took a little bit of time for this to happen. It wasn't until later in the 60s, early 70s, when Romita Sr. was really solidified in his role as the artist for Spider-Man, did Spider-Man become the #1 comic selling character at Marvel. So with that being said, the 70s is what literally did that. Stories like Night When Gwen Stacy Died and 24 Hours of Doomsday are both utter bangers. I love them so much. Now, I can understand why probably you're wondering wow, if you love these stories so much and you love the artists and you love the writers and everything they did for Spider-Man, making him the GOAT, why is this not higher? Well, for me, I think the other decades just have a little bit more for me. I think The Night Gwen Stacy Died is quite literally the most important comic maybe ever in Marvel history. It may be one of the most important comics ever to come out ever because it allowed writers coming forwards to do something more extreme than they were willing to do before this book came out because it was so successful, it was so popular, and they just killed off the most successful and popular character at the time. We're talking just Marvel here. At the time, his love interest. It's that is nuts. I can't believe they would actually do that. But it's good. It's freaking good. Especially because, you know me, I'm not the biggest Gwen Stacy fan. I felt like her character story had run its course. She was very boring. The fans weren't a fan of her. Stan Lee has come out and said this himself. So I'm really cool with Night Gwen Stacy Died. I think it's one of the greatest stories ever written. I've already talked about 24 Hours of Doomsday and how it gets adapted in the 90s show. I think that's really dope. It has Spider-Man and J. Jonah Jameson actually having to be together, even though they both can't stand each other. And you got the Jackal. Honestly, that's probably one of the bad things about this era. Because as much as I said there's a lot of great to this era, I don't give a shit about the Jackal. I don't care about Clone Wars. I don't care about Clone Wars in the 90s or in the 70s. I don't give a damn. So the Jackal's appearance really bothers me. I'm not the biggest Jackal fan. I do want to make a video on him in the future because he is in the 2017 Spider-Man show. And you know me, I like adaptation videos. But I just don't really give a shit about the Jackal, man. I just don't care. So the Jackal's creation was in the 70s. That's not helping anyone's case here. However, Punisher being created and added in the 70s definitely helps big time. We're finally getting Punisher adapted in a live-action Spider-Man movie, but Punisher has actually been around Spider-Man's mythos for so long, whether it be in adaptations or just the comics. He appears in the 90s Spider-Man show. God knows how many comic books they've had where they fought each other or they worked together. I really am a big fan of Punisher and Spider-Man's dynamic with each other, so the 70s also is going to get way extra credit for that too. But at the end of the day, it's the bottom half of the A tier for me because these other 3 that we have left to talk about are my big 3. They're my top 3, and I love these 3 so much. So the top of the A tier, because the next 2 are both going to be S tier. So the top half of A tier for me is the 90s era. And this is probably going to shock a lot of the people watching, because I'm sure a lot of people watching were guessing that I would be a bigger fan of the 90s than anything else, because Maximum Carnage is all I fucking talk about. God, I love Carnage, man. He's just the best. And Carnage appeared in the 90s, as did Shriek. So you'd think I would put this higher. But overall, for me, it's hard for me to put this higher when the other 2, the 80s and the 60s, just did so much for Spider-Man. Let me focus on what the 90s did right, though. Todd McFarlane. This man, yes, he started in the 80s, but he got his own Spider-Man run where he both wrote and drew Spider-Man. A lot of people did not like the run that much, the story at least for it. If you didn't like the artwork in the run, you're just lying to yourself. The artwork is unbelievable. But a lot of people didn't really like the writing that much of the story. They thought it was a little shallow and it didn't offer much to the readers. Overall, I still think it's important to point this out, though, because this is actually the most sold comic in Spider-Man history. Is the very first one Todd McFarlane had in the series. So I think it's really cool we point that out and what Todd McFarlane did for the game. Obviously, we all know he would end up leaving Marvel over some disagreements on this exact Spider-Man run actually as well, and he would go and start Spawn and become the legend he is now. But originally, he was just a legendary artist working at Marvel, making Spider-Man. He was drawing Wolverine a little bit. And the man was amazing. He's probably my favorite comic book artist of all time. So that's a big reason why the 90s is going to be so high up for me. But there's more than just that. We talked about Maximum Carnage, didn't we? Maximum Carnage is one of my, if not my favorite Spider-Man stories ever. I do think the best is Death of Jean DeWolf, and I think Child Within is also up there, and I also think Kraven's Last Hunt's up there. But for my favorite, like just personal bias, I just love Maximum Carnage. It has all my favorite characters. It has a great ideology discussion, like, do you kill the bad guy? Do you let the bad guy live so he can redeem himself? But what if he keeps killing? At what point is killing too much? If you become a killer, are you just as bad as them? There's a lot going on in Maximum Carnage, a lot of ideological, like, arguing, and I like that. I like when Spider-Man isn't just fisticuffs, but there's also a lot of that in Maximum Carnage too. So I'm a big fan of Maximum Carnage, and I just mentioned it, but Child Within also came out in this era. I would place this as the #2 Spider-Man story all time, and I think it goes without saying, it's just so phenomenal. I pray if we were to get any Spider-Man adaptation done, it would be Child Within. I would choose it over Death of Jean DeWolf, I would choose it over Kraven's Last Hunt, and I would choose it over Maximum Carnage. We already have Maximum Carnage video game, that's 1-1, so. But the Child Within just offers you such a beautiful storyline between Peter and his best friend Harry Osborn after the death of Green Goblin, who was Norman Osborn, as Harry's taking up the mantle and he's going insane and he's trying to be a father, and it's all getting to him as he sees the memories and the ghosts of his past father. Child Within is so peak. So when you put it like that, I feel like people should understand why the 90s rank so highly. You know, there's just so much good there. There's actually another good storyline too during the 90s. It's, if you're a Mary Jane fan, like I am, this is going to be an all-time great storyline. It's like called Kravenov's Revenge. It's when the Kraven brothers, or half-brothers, whatever, when they're going up against Spider-Man, they got him kidnapped, and Chameleon's pretending to be Peter, and he's like about to go and attack Mary Jane, but then Mary Jane beats the ever-living brakes off of him. Yeah, that's this story. That happens in the 90s, baby, so we love that story. But, for y'all know me. I can't have this in the S tier because I'm not the biggest Clone Saga guy. I don't really like the Clone Saga at all. I just talked about it at length. So for me, I had to put it here at the top of A tier because the Clone Saga woo, that is too much for me. It's definitely nowhere near One More Day. It's not like that bad or anything. It's a lot. But we move on. We're at the top. We're at the S tier. S tier! We are at the literal tippy top of my tier list of the greatest decades of Spider-Man comics. And I honestly have a feeling many people will disagree with me. I'm going to say the one in second first, so everybody's going to know the one that actually would come in first, obviously, because there's only 2 left. But I really want to talk about both of them at length, so it's important that I just, get it out there. And then I talk about one, and I'll talk about the one in first. But at the bottom of the S tier, it's the second greatest era for me, the second greatest decade of Spider-Man comics. I have the 60s. Please put down the pitchforks. Please put down the pitchforks. I know everybody loves the OG. I love the OG too. Stan Lee is that guy. Are we serious, Ditko? Are we serious? This is some of the greatest artwork put to screen, and it was done over 60 years ago. It's damn near impossible for me to not say the 60s is the greatest or second greatest Spider-Man decade ever. It just did so much to establish Spider-Man, who he is, and why we love the character. When you look at all of his classic villains, they all come from the 60s. I wouldn't count Venom as a classic villain, but I'm older now. I was like alive when he was getting like made into mainstream and whatnot. But when we talk about classic villains, I'm talking about Shocker, Vulture, Chameleon, Lizard, Electro, Sandman, Green Goblin, Rhino, Prowler. All of these characters, Mysterio, Kraven, all of these characters first appeared in the 60s. They first appeared the first decade Spider-Man was a character, and man, does that make a big difference. How many characters do you know their very first decade of coming out have like 12 different household names for their villains? Like, it's at least 8. Most superheroes don't even have like 4 to 5 supervillains that like a common fan can name. Spider-Man, at least in the 60s alone, has like 7 or 8. That's crazy to think about. Those writers and the artists, because it's a teamwork, when they were designing these characters, were cooking with gas. There's almost no reason characters that are 60 years old shouldn't feel outdated at all. I don't understand it, but man, did they do a banger job at it. The 60s also offer storylines like Spider-Man No More, which is one of the greatest Spider-Man stories ever. The guilt of Spider-Man and everything weighing on top of him, public perception of him is just waning constantly. What is he supposed to do? How is he supposed to react to it? We also get Kingpin for his first appearance in the 60s as well. So I personally have a hard time putting the 60s lower than any other decade but the 80s. Because the 80s, Spider-Man 80s and the 80s, that's my favorite. That's the best. I would go on a limb. I will go on the record and say that in the 80s, 1980s, Spider-Man had his best decade ever. There's just so much good books in here. Death of Gene DeWolf. In my opinion, that's the greatest Spider-Man comic ever. Kraven's Last Hunt. In my opinion, trying to be objective, that's the third best Spider-Man story ever. Spider-Man Gang War. This is super duper iconic. Spider-Man the Black Suit arc. This is even somehow more iconic than the last one I just named. This is one of the most iconic things in any fictional story ever. Everybody knows about Spider-Man's black suit. California Schemin'. All right, that one's just for me. I love Prowler. And he's drawn by Todd McFarlane too. And if you look at it, it looks like Prowler is like a prototype version of Spawn. Like, not even joking. You guys gotta check it out. Spider-Man versus Wolverine. This is the first time Spider-Man ever killed somebody. He did it on accident, but he killed an innocent, I shouldn't say innocent. He killed somebody he was not trying to kill. And it lives with him to this day. Spider-Man versus Firelord. This is quite possibly the biggest feat and best feat in Spider-Man's history. He beat a planet buster just by himself with just his fist. Beat the brakes off of this guy. Nothing can stop the Juggernaut. Are we going to act like nobody here knows this story? This is also one of the most iconic storylines ever. It got adapted in Shattered Dimensions. It got its own freaking level in Shattered Dimensions. Characters like Venom made their first appearance here. And Venom would go on to sell better than any other Marvel character throughout the 90s. At certain points. Silver Sable made her appearance here, a character who also would get her own story. It's crazy how many of these characters would become so popular and iconic. Hobgoblin as well, the Rose as well. The 80s is some of the best time for Spider-Man stories. Like, just so freaking phenomenal. I've talked about Death of Gene DeWolf and Kraven's Last Hunt at length, so I don't really want to dive into these too much, but I truly think you guys don't understand how great these stories are. If you haven't read them, you need to. Because both of these books and Child Within are just game-changing. They're going to shatter your perception of things because they're so fucking good. And they're going to have you loving Vermin because Vermin is the man. But yes, overall, I think this would officially be my tier list. In the S tier, I would have the 80s and the 60s. In the A tier, I would have the 90s and the 70s. In the B tier, I would have the 2000s. And in the C tier, I would have the 2010s. I said it earlier, I'll say it again just in case anybody missed it at the very beginning of the video, but the 2020s I'm not going to rank. It's not finished yet, and I feel like a bad creator if I try and rank it for what it is now when it could change drastically within the next 5 years or 4 years or whatever. At the end of the day, this is just my opinion, though. These are my thoughts. This is what I was feeling about Spider-Man. This is how I do feel about Spider-Man, and this is how I feel about all of his comic storylines. If you guys disagree, you know what to do. You can go down below and file a complaint in my comment section. Just be like, yo, Spider-Dunk, I don't agree with this. I think you're wrong. And I would be like, fair, but let's talk about this. And then we could have a discussion in the comment section down below. Let me know. That's pretty much it for me in this video. I do know people wanted me to do an adaptations like through the decades video, so I may do something like that. That could be really fun. Maybe I'll even rank the adaptations. Maybe one adaptation per decade. That could also be fun. We'll talk about it. You guys let me know what you think down below, what you guys want to see in future videos as well. I don't think I have anything else to say. I think this is it for me. Yeah, this is it. Dunk out. Peace.